you know, sees me, doesn't see you. Aha, you're stuck.
Well, I'm the one
Ugh. Can't get it right, can I? I could if I wanted to. I'm not too concerned. I think if it's closer, then we lose more.
True.
I know I'm assless. Some of the people I have to do coffee things without a mask. Was that the only one you got there, or is there more?
Oh, he's the only saint. Also brought
That cuter?
just in case of my turn.
Okay.
Possible revenue stream for me could be terrible. I have to figure out how to market.
How many online ones are there?
I don't know.
You can find that out.
I
Do a
don't
Google
actually
search of it
know.
and see if it's a lot.
See, the professional readers that I have gone to, the people I knew personally,
Well, people set up shop somewhere, but in this era, how many have set up a virtual shop? It would make it much more accessible. You can pay PayPal or Venmo.
I have thought about doing it on Twitch. I know where she was.
I noticed that.
We're gonna get
It's just him that's gonna order.
Oh, I got the greasy spicy sizzling skillet, okay, and a strawberry shake. Okay, you go for coffee right now?
Yeah, I went to a cookout.
Of course you did.
I had planned an event and then forgot my mother planned an event the next day before. She called me yesterday and said, hey, we're having a cookout tomorrow. I'm like, okay, I can't not show up. I got my kid.
You got to.
Yep.
And you got to eat barbecue.
Yeah, that's a steak. Big old steak. All right. So she ordered. Let's start the official. A second here. You can do a quickie. We'll just do a quick intro. I'm Ryan. Sy. Anything you want to put out. Like if you want to direct them to anything. Welcome to Denny's Day. I'm Ryan Kinney of HEYMAN Productions, and beautiful blasphemy spray.
And Sy Castells of poetry, writing various things. Not really active anywhere right now. Stay tuned.
Yeah, we were. We'll come back in a second, but this is technically our Memorial Day death special. We're going to talk about death, but there's only two of us here that have shown up. Apparently, death scares people away. Well, so whether or not that's what we focus on is up in the air. It may go wildly off the rails.
It could be death that scared people, or it could be the fact that it's a national holiday.
Could be COVID.
Yeah.
This is kind of our first public gathering since COVID.
Yep.
We are both vaccinated.
Yep.
We have this doodling on Zoom, but we have not had anyone join us.
In a sense that we're just being watched by computers.
We're watching ourselves on the computer. It's very masturbatory. No, we're in the back of Denny's master, verbally.
Verbal masturbation. We'll see if it changes to any other kind.
So as a quickie, you said, stay tuned. You were mentioning you do tarot readings, and I threw the idea out there that maybe online you shot back with Twitch.
Yeah, I was thinking about doing tarot readings over Twitch. The chief barriers to that are, number one, technology, because I don't have an especially powerful computer right now. Although I suppose if I'm not like streaming a really heavy game or something like that, it might not matter that much.
Yeah, and kind of shut down some background things.
Yeah.
I mean, this computer over here for Zoom is 5 years old.
I feel like I would have an easier time doing that. If
She
I
already got this order. Thank you.
Yes. So, but the other barrier to that would be just the old-fashioned imposter syndrome, like feeling like I'm good enough at it, even though every time I have done a reading for someone else without pay, they've been extremely gratified and felt that they received good wisdom from it. So I feel like it's just a matter of getting to the point where I'm ready to try and then trying.
Not that these Denny's days are ever wildly popular, but if anyone's listening and ever wants to shoot some ideas out there, feel free to comment. Or you can, if you know someone else that's doing something similar, shoot us a link and check it out.
And actually, there's another thing. Actually, speaking of trying new things, pretty much the last thing I tried before COVID started was stand-up comedy for the first time in my life.
Oh, I tried one of those. I was awful at it.
And like, well, here's the thing. I tried it, and I was good at it.
Hey,
I got several laughs, and I enjoyed it, and I felt confident doing it. And when I went home that day, I felt like I am definitely doing this again. This might be the thing that I'm best at. And then
COVID happened.
and then COVID. And the thing is, like, I know it's possible to do comedy without a live audience. But I feel like as someone who was just starting out
Yeah, you gotta
and
make
relying
your
on
bones
getting that
work out the mechanics.
yeah, and like just being able to like hear the laughter immediately when and knowing what gets laughs and what doesn't, and like knowing what plays well on stage. It's like I feel like I need that feedback during the early phases of learning a new skill, and it is a skill. But like I'm not the most like socially confident person in the world. I'm 33 right now, and like it has taken me this long to actually learn how to be socially confident in certain situations. I have figured out how to go to parties. That is something that did not come back.
I kind of went backwards. I was always a guy that didn't give a shit about anybody, so I kind of did my own thing and was clearly an asshole. And then later on, I started doing this thing where I would just ghost out of the party when it was my time to go. It became an excuse to be able to drive home without anyone else being drunk. But then it became funny because I'm like, I want the interaction with people to go, what happened to Ryan? So I guess it's probably an ego thing. Like I want them to have a mystery.
But it's kind of an anti-ego though, because like you're not thriving on the immediate knowledge that you're making.
No, and in most cases they'll probably go, he left. Oh, okay. Just like the idea of like, fuck, Ryan disappeared. Yeah, okay, bye.
But like what I've been doing since then is like I have this file on my computer that is called comedy question mark. I just put in like all the stories that I hope to one day try on a comedy stage. And I think that it might be time to start trying to look for comedy open mics that I can go to, because places are starting to open up.
So we got a few ideas on that. Have you heard of a local comedian called Bill Squire?
No, I haven't.
All right. So I feel like he grew up in a boat that you're kind of in now. He's pretty open about having stage fright and low confidence and body image issues as well.
I had terrible stage.
Because he grew up as a chubby kid, was terrible at school. Still a big guy. But he is one of the co-hosts on Alan Cox Show, 100.7 in the evenings, like 2 to something, 2 to 7, 2 to 6. But if you go, he also has free albums online. Yep, that's the dude.
All right.
And it's Bill Squire at alancoxshow.com. He's pretty easy to talk to. You can hit up his Twitter or whatever. And you tell him where you're at. There's a comedy club in Cleveland. And they do open mics. And This guy's pretty cool. And then there's also another co-host on that show, a woman named Mary Santora. Same thing. She's just starting out. And she was a bartender her whole life and a terrible alcoholic, blackout drunk alcoholic. And now she's sober and trying to make her dreams come true. To the point that she had to dump her fiance and all sorts of stuff. Because he wanted the family and to settle down, and she wanted I want to go through my careers.
Right.
But I think Bill's definitely your jam. And just kind of read up on his story, and I think it'll give you a few ideas of where, because he was a Mormon.
Lots of good material there.
He got kicked out of the religion because he went on his mission to Thailand and slept with a lot of the local prostitutes and started corrupting people.
I don't see why that should be a problem. I mean,
They are, but it's against the Mormon religion.
Anyway, you know what actually first turned me on to the idea that this might be something to try was, so I'm a longtime poet, and for a long time I've been a performing poet. Sometimes, and like, not all of my poems are that serious. Some of them are humorous, but most of them are very dark and depressing. But what you can do in poetry is when you're performing, you can introduce each poem with like a short anecdote or comment or something like that. This is a poem about blah blah blah. What I found is that I was getting laughs in my little intros. I was like, I could just and like I could have a serious poem, but it could have a funny intro.
I'm always much harder on myself when it comes to the poem because there's an old acronym that I would go by through. Resist the urge to explain.
Yeah,
and tell the poem
and I would never introduce my poems with an explanation.
Like people are trying to, I promise you this is good, because it lacks confidence in the work that's going to follow.
Whereas like I would be like like for instance, I would have a poem that I wrote that was about like being in a dead-end job that didn't stimulate me. I'd be like, I wrote this poem while I was working at a gas station or something like that. You know, so just something to like give a tiny bit of context, or just like, you know, just like so it's not going in cold. Because I feel like going in cold, there's nothing wrong with that per se, but I feel like that takes a different kind of.
Well, and you're doing the warm-up, which is more of a performance thing than poetry. Poetry thing is less of a performance as it is stating the word. It's about the word, not about the performance as much.
Yeah, and I do feel like there's a difference between performing a poem and just reading it.
Mm-hmm.
I aspire to perform my poems. I aspire to like do more than just read the words that are on the page, because I feel like if I'm just reading the words that are on the page, people may as well just be reading the poem. Mm-hmm. And there's a reason for me to be there in flesh and blood on the stage in front of a microphone, using my human voice, and I may as well use that to its fullest potential.
I've got only two that are considered only best if performed. I've got one that should never be read, never be performed, because it's 6 pages long. Like, it's really monotonous. It's only meant to be read. But I got one called Hammer, where the first couple times I performed it was at constructing on it, and in between each stanza, I would smash it to the paper. Now I can't do that on a stage. Although I have read that on stages, but I just replaced that with smash, the word smash. And then I got one called Identity Crisis that can be performed on stage, and that's where I'm arguing with myself. My friend Aaron Kosunik does some of these with us in IDG Productions. I've tried to get him to make films of a few of my works. Thank you.
Yours, right?
Yeah, he's the only one ordered.
You want to order anything?
No, but can I get a refill?
Yeah, I can bring you pot.
Yeah, that's fine. Thank you.
I'm glad I came.
All right, I'm glad you're happy with it. Then we get all the nice ambient food sounds. Okay. You're taking the foodie picture too?
Absolutely.
Thank you. Oh, cool. Appreciate it. Yeah, you did just say. I'm like, okay, right back. you want to refill on your coffee?
Oh, yes.
So while you're getting yourself prepped to chew down, I'll give you a few more to-dos coming up that might be some opportunities for you. So Ingenuity Cleveland has gone back to doing public events.
Nice.
So they're doing outdoor thing called Neighbor Nights. So the third Thursday of each month, there is an abandoned building, 1 block, 55th and St. Clair.
Okay. So
Yes, and it's a few blocks from where the Ingenuity actually is. And each one is themed. The next one coming up is going to be move, like get out there and exercise and stuff like that. Right? The one in July is called The Power of Words. So you can guess when I jumped in and says, I got some stuff for you. I got all those freebie books we make. Do beautiful blasphemy. I used to host workshops for making poems out of cut up words. So there's an activity. And how many poets don't have their venues anymore?
exactly.
I know a ton of them because I went to every one of the Cleveland ones, and I know the Erie people. So I'm trying to talk them into doing a open mic there. I'm really trying to talk them, at least for this next one, to bring out my sculpture, which is that big piano thing. That would make a great performance venue also for a virtual. One of these days, the TV throne I'd like to use too, that has to be added to it. You can't move the building because it's got a security camera on it that I can wire to point at the performer and show up on all the TVs behind you. So you'd be surrounded by yourself.
Yeah, that doesn't sound terrifying at all. Oh, this is good.
But they're behind you, so you won't have to stare at yourself.
Yeah.
Just yourself would be staring at you.
But it also means that if you see pictures of your performance later and you don't like how you look, it could be potentially infinitely worse.
Oh yeah, well it's magnifying.
Yes, absolutely. But that's like,
And it's a very
It's a way
unique
to-
lighting thing to it.
but like whenever you're performing, you have to be willing to push your personal comfort zone. That is the nature of performance.
And the TV throne's got this RGB lighting. It kind of does a lot to make it look pretty cool. Because the lights are red, green, and blue, like the 3 projectors in the TV colors. But when they hit you, every shadow comes out with CMYK. So whether you like
I'd love to
yourself or
see
not,
what that looks like.
go to my Instagram. There's also an Analog Kingdom folder in the albums on the HEYMAN Productions Facebook page. One of the cool things about this sculpture is getting your picture on it, so people come sit on the front and take your picture. So there are hundreds of pictures of people doing this, and it looks best at night in the dark. It does exist. The throne itself is called the Analog Kingdom, which was the beginning of what became that story, because they made a little storybook to go with it. All that good fun. So that's kind of my current. That's what I've been working on. I'm working on building a more than life-size TARDIS for my son. His birthday is July 8th, and I want to finish it before then and deliver it the night before. So he wakes up in the morning, there's a TARDIS.
Yeah, that sounds.
I'm gonna tear his mother's new sofa stuff. Good luck moving it. Bye.
I imagine that you are a
No,
frustrating co-parent.
I am, because I'm the fun guy.
I am there's a lot of things about my life. Oh, you need
That's a great time to this year.
Never had a child. There's absolutely nothing wrong with being a parent, having children. Some of my best friends are children, but when I think of like an alternative universe where in addition to all the things I currently have going on, I am also a parent. Oh my God. So overwhelming.
It completely changes your mindset. So a lot of what you had going on now would have been entirely, it would have been a whole divergent
I would
path.
have made a whole lot of different decisions for sure.
And there are quite a few decisions I had to make because I had a kid, including losing the house that I had. I had to move this way to be nearer one thing, and also job related. That hasn't really worked out as well as I could. I'm a much better artist than an employee. Because in most places, I usually get bored very quickly, very easily, especially with any form of repetitive task. and start searching the internet for things I more enjoy. And then I get in trouble.
I know. I don't really have that problem so much. I do have, I practice. I was one of those kids who got misdiagnosed with ADD because I was really just lazy. I honestly was lazy.
My son has been diagnosed with that, and people have accused me. I am not ADHD. I like it.
Oh yeah.
I can focus pretty intensely on things.
But like I have the capacity to focus on pretty much anything. Almost indefinitely. That's why I could run a marathon, because it was just like, okay, I'm just gonna run and not stop. But not stop until I reach the end. Like that's not even that hard once you put your mind to it. I'm lying. It was hard.
Physically hard, but if you, it's a mindset. Like,
yeah.
I'm a small guy. I'm not this guy with tons of muscles. But I have lifted things that are hundreds of pounds.
The trick is to trick your brain into thinking that
You
stopping
can
is
do
no
it.
longer an option.
Right. It's the half of strength is just your mind telling you you're capable of doing this.
And that's like,
Half of it is physical ability, and the
That's
other
like-
half is I'm not gonna not do it.
right. And like, I'm like, and like completely like when I've been weightlifting, like I remember like when I was first going through my course, like when the ordeal first started, like the first time I went into the gym with this on my mind, I was benching, which is my favorite thing to do because you can lift heavy weights while lying down, and I was like doing like a relatively low weight compared to what I knew I was capable of, but I was still like, you know, I would do 1 rep and then 2 reps, and then I would remember the thing that was going on, and suddenly I couldn't lift it, and I had to do the roll of shame, which is where you roll the bar down your body.
You have a spotter?
I've never have had a spotter. It's been worse than when I.
Oh, because you feel like you're being judged by the guy doing the thing.
It's not just that. It's like I've had people try to like lift the bar off of me when I kind of well handled. I like. It's
They're just not good at doing the job.
yeah. Like and you know, granted at the time I was living as a woman, then he contributed to it, but like still,
I see.
like
Yeah, men trying to be. It's not really chauvinism. It's mock chivalry.
it's chauvinism. I mean, like okay, so like,
Yeah,
so like
probably
I was working at a gas
mostly
station.
A, little C, little B.
I was working at a gas station, and an old man would deliver the rotors, like big metal heavy things.
Mhm.
And like, you know, say put a stack of 4 rotors on the counter, I would sign for it.
Mhm.
And then I would pick up the 4 rotors and start to carry them back with absolute no difficulty. I was strong. And this old guy look at me and say, "No, you can't carry those." Like,
I'm not a woman, but I have animal license. I'm short. People don't think I can do a lot of it. But I'm sure it was divorced.
well, because it's also like, well, there's an implication that this is something you can't do because you're a woman.
Right. And then I'm
And like when you're adding on that, the fact that I'm also trans and have not come out, like it's like being limited by something that isn't even part of me.
Yep. So, you brought up something, and the topic of this had been death, but maybe we can talk about something because I don't think you know the story. How about the death of a marriage? So I will start with my story, so you have time to get.
Oh, that's something we have in common, isn't it?
Yes, because I don't know if you know how my marriage broke up. My son's mother is not my ex-wife. She's a different woman. But my son's mother does know my ex-wife. Did. So high school sweetheart, grew up in Madison, little town, moved out together, got engaged, bought a house, and then got married shortly thereafter at 21. So I bought my first house when I was 21. A lot due to her hard work. that was kind of her thing. Like she had to prove to her father that she was an adult, and this was one of the ways. Except she bought a house a mile from her parents.
That's what a lot of people use marriage for, is as a way to jumpstart the journey.
Well,
into
I had proposed to her a few years before that. We were engaged before we moved out together. We were kind of just still in high school. So you notice all the red flags
Right,
here. I grew up in kind of a broken home. My family was together, but not very well put together. I was abused by my mother. My father had some drug problems. Oh, I guess he must be experienced in this. I forgot about the milkshake. Ooh, that's a lot of milkshake. Joy.
When I'm depressed, I know how to
I get it. You're doing this thing hard.
This is how I do it.
So I don't have to keep saying it. Her name is Lisa. I don't care if my one friend Aaron is always bitching if I use real people's names. It's silly. No one's gonna sue me. Don't care.
Well, I mean, it's
There's
not
a million
exactly the
Lisas out
least common name.
No. Her name was Lisa.
And if you use my first name without my last name, people might be able to track me down.
So we got our house, and she was the kind that sort of worked constantly. She was a waitress. I did lots of odd jobs, factory work. I picked up extra jobs at something like Denny's for a few weeks because I told her I could do her job and I tried it. The only good tip I got was from when I was still training.
Whatever works.
I guess, but then I had to explain to him what my fiance also worked. Then eventually she got a job at the Olive Garden, and that was kind of the best she could do as a waitress. Then she started, we got the house, and she's kind of like in this place, like, what do I do now? I kind of did my goal. So she looked at schooling, and popular at the time was nursing. Everybody's doing it because you make so much money and so on and so forth, right? Except she's not good at school. Especially when you are working full-time income. She was overwhelmed. So she got all those early prerequisites. I did most of those for her. I never went to school. I mean, I never went to college, really. I took a few classes at Lincoln, but nothing to do with what she did. But it was basic, like math, chemistry stuff, things like that, that you technically learned in high school. But most people are required to take it again because they forget it all about the time. Because when you get into the actual nursing program, you get the harder stuff. So I did a lot of that for her. I did her book reports, her English. I read the books. Some of these books were long. Like, it's the guy who leads that class assigns the book he wrote. Oh. This is Kent Ashtabula. That man was very interesting. Anyways, so then starts the arguments and all that good stuff. And then finally she's like, I'm going to have to stop working eventually. Nursing program. I'm going to need you to do some more work. So she's already working on the weekends at the Olive Garden. We lived in Austinburg, and to mentor where Olive Garden was like a 45-minute drive. It's not worth it for me to drive out here for a job, but Austinburg did not have a second job. I had a factory job every day. I needed a second job to build up the money so that she can go to nursing school, so I can support her. So I'm like, well, you already have a job at the Olive Garden. I'll come do something there, and I'll just leave when you do, so we'll be technically making double money. I already knew I couldn't be a server, so I was going to be a host. My interactions with people are great in customer service until 5 minutes in. Then my sense of humor gets on the terms. Or I take pictures for the kids. That happens. This is why I'm going down. One reason.
I bet there's more.
I know they let me loose in a church before a wedding once, and I put the crown of thorns and I took pictures.
Yeah, it's still here.
I took the selfie with the crown of thorns, and I'm like, you left me alone in a church. You know me. They needed a stand-in groomsman because one of their guys canceled last minute. That was a mistake. So of course we start having the arguments. Of course we start having it. Well, right. So while she was working as a server in the nursing program, there was an older couple that became regulars. They're in their 50s. And they kind of got really close and talking and took her wildly. Found out what she was doing, kind of supported her a lot. she had this weird, strange relationship with her dad, just a lot of animosity. Not really a ton of reasons. Her father wasn't the brightest man, but he was earnest. And he would fully admit he wasn't the brightest man. But he went to work, he worked full time, he did what he could. And he lived honestly. His wife was schizophrenic, and their younger daughter was schizophrenic, which made it difficult on him because he didn't understand, and he came from a world that was a little redneck. And his family abandoned him years ago. His mother was crazy. So they didn't have grandparents.
Yeah.
One set had died off, the other set. Right. When her mother's grandparents died, the siblings, the aunts and uncles kind of did some real dumb shit, so they cut them off. Her father's mother tried to kill him. She tried to run him off the road with the car. Lots of growing up, things like that. So he just cut him off. It's funny, I remember one of his brothers years later and found out he was crazy. So it was more him and his mother fighting, not just his mother fighting. So weird relationship with the dad. Has this surrogate grandparent kind of thing, surrogate parents. They were about the same age as her dad and mom. And then the woman got dementia. And eventually she had to be put in a nursing home. At this point, my wife had gotten a license as an STNA to kind of try out some nursing things, which I'm still doing that while working the Olive Garden, while going to school. Yeah, and it was on the brink of insanity. And then she's telling me I need to work to make extra money for her too. And the husband was a manager at First Energy. So he made a good amount of money. So he tipped more than the checks usually were. Well, when this woman went to the nursing home, my wife went to become a STNA at the nursing home to watch it. Oh, wow. Then the wife died. Her dementia went within a year from the diagnosis to death. So the woman died in her mid-50s. And my wife did not process it at all. Instead, we fought to the point that what was supposed to be saving us money by driving together to work, we couldn't drive together anymore. And we had to work at different sides of the building. Although I love my wife dearly, and we had one opportunity I never had. Yes, we did. She wound up going out drinking with her husband repeatedly. Until she slept with him, which I didn't actually figure out until after the divorce. But it was dumb. People were kind of trying to tell me things. And I was like, no, I trust her. And I'm like, oh, it's like a surrogate dad. Well, you don't sleep with your dad. Unless you have a serious illness or electrical.
I don't know what the term is. I think that like these terms come from the time when the genders were considered so fundamentally different that there was no like female equivalent. It was just, this is something I'm going through. Who knows what women go through, you know?
Yep. So I mean, it had been the nights where she stopped coming home. She would spend the night at their place a lot, even before the woman died, because she would go there and be kind of a live-in healthcare for her until she went to this nursing home. That's one of the reasons she had gotten the STNA license, so she could go through the and get paid more. I mean, I was at their house all the time, and when the wife died, I was a pallbearer. So then she stopped coming home, and then one night, I'm like, she left for a while, and she had the checkbook. I needed the checkbook to do something. I needed to check something in the checkbook. I found a letter that she had written to the guy on the floor that says, "I can't wait until I'm divorced." Oh, and I'm like, I didn't know we were getting divorced. To me. So when I got home from work at 2 a.m., when I found this, because she was there, I hadn't been there every night. And I was looking in her car for this checkbook, not trying to steal because I had no suspicions. I just needed the checkbook.
And you're married, so
Yeah.
it's reasonable.
Yes. And I saw that, and I woke her up and said, "We need to talk." She didn't say a word to me. She got my arm. She was scared of me. She was really scared of me. I mean, because she went around later telling people I abused her. And I think that became a justification. And I honestly think she did. We had gotten into fights with her. I had thrown things around, and one time she poured water on me, and I backed her.
Both arguably assaults, but
Right, and part of it was a reaction, but I didn't mean to. It was more like someone poured cold water on me, and I just reacted.
yeah.
For the same reason I had told her, it's
Instinctual
like,
thing.
if you like startle me awake, I might end up swinging. Which I explained to every woman that's ever shared my bed. And two that have allowed me
I
to
mean,
sleep.
like, I've been like, you know, like in a distraught mental state, and someone tried to touch me, and I was like, don't touch me.
Doesn't make it right after that. It doesn't make it right when I move around. It just wasn't a mentally stable place. I struggle with suicide in my life too. I've never gone to the point of taking action more like although I do. But okay, so that was the end of our marriage. And then I got served papers very shortly thereafter. And because she knew she did something wrong and I didn't, I kind of got a fair shake. She took most of the money for nursing school. I didn't realize she was sleeping. I just knew that she wanted the marriage. Which hit me like a ton. She came with her shit out. I had to shit. Made the mistake of telling her I had a porno tape myself. So she took it with her. Like, damn, it's okay. I still got the pictures. I could never share the pictures because I took them of her when I was 16, which would make her 16. Yeah, those are gone.
Right.
But at the time, I had them. So yeah, that would be a problem.
Right, yeah. Sometimes it's best for things not to exist anymore.
Well, I had kind of grown up with a family. Like I was over their house every week for dinner. And even after our marriage was over, I still came over on Sundays and hung out because they were a bubble. The schizophrenic mother and daughter, they never saw each other. It was just the four of them. So I'd come and hang out and have dinner. And then I'd go to holidays and I'd be there, and so would the two of them, her and the guy. So eventually I kind of got back on my feet, started like, what am I going to do? And then there was this really smart woman close to the Olive Garden. And I'm like, you're too smart to be working. You can do better. And then she got me to the point where I was like, oh, I can do that. Because I was doing all my boss's computer work. And I'm like, why am I not the manager? Like, oh, wait a moment. I can. So I started looking at school, kind of trying to figure some things out. Then I got fired from my job that I've been at for 4 years. The longest job I've ever had was like 1.5 years. I've had 37 jobs since 14. Some at the same time.
Jobs, but my longest was 12, 20.
I eventually do something to either quit
3
or
and
get fired.
So you beat me.
Yes, I either quit or get fired. The next longest was about 3 years. And then when I lost that job, her dad sent me an email. Sent me an email saying, don't come around my family.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah, I ran into them about 5 years later. I never had closure on that, never had closure on marriage. My wife ran out the door and never came back. Never had closure on them either, my surrogate family. And found out about 5 years later, it was because she told me to stop. Which, when our marriage broke up, I said, if she ever makes a choice between me and her, give her a relationship. What happened? But he could have just told me that.
Yeah.
Instead of making up a lame excuse.
Yeah, and that is
Instead of
spending because it's not like you were like everybody goes through initial employment.
So I entered school during the Obama era, without any of that surrogate family, without any sort of job security. I had been working and never gotten a job since 18. So, and I'm a blue collar family. No job means you're fucked. Yeah, like there's no security. But the Obama era had unemployment last year, and I had a ton of money in my 401k. I actually took a trip to Japan. Nice. And then paid for my first 2 years of college. Then I not that very smart girl at the Olive Garden. Turns out
there might be an end to that story.
Turns out she was a virgin at 32 something 32.
Gotta start somewhere.
Christian. So, waiting for marriage. Had a dude bailed on her. Dude came back. Dude bailed on her a second time a week before the wedding.
Oh,
So she flunked out of college due to depression and moved back in with her parents and spent the next decade working at the Olive Garden. And then Valentine's Day happens, and you do not want to be in a restaurant with Valentine's Day and you're single. Especially the Olive Garden, which is supposed to be the fancy restaurant. Yeah, so we kind of made out, and then she became the sex, and then a year later she got married. And the whole time she would never admit she was in love. So, and we kind of off and on dated, mostly because of her. I have an unending attraction to her, which is why I'm not in a relationship. Not really interested in them ever, but that might change. But I can't picture myself like this. Right now, I'll just focus on myself. I love him to death, and so far I've gotten to live it. Despite dropping him on the fire.
I like to.
Well, as a baby is screaming in the background. So that was the death of my marriage.
my story is much shorter.
Okay.
My marriage is much shorter. My marriage, well, I was fully legally divorced before my 1 year anniversary.
Oof. Yeah. My marriage lasted about 5 years, and I had dated her about 5 years before.
Yeah. And like from what I've heard, like most divorces occur around like about the 5 year mark. If you're gonna get sick of each other, that's about when it happens. That's about how long my other marriage lasted. But anyway, we got married in 2015. Let's see, we had, like I had, at the time I was living as a woman, at the time,
So it was married to a man.
yeah. Well, it was by the time we got married, but we planned the wedding before the actual wedding occurred.
Okay.
But it was in September 2015.
Okay.
So it had been legal for a few months by then. But you see, the thing is, I was living as a woman. I was bisexual, but because at the time I had mostly dated men, because it's way more convenient for a woman to date men than to date women, because there's just
No options. Take your word on that. I haven't had much luck with women.
women are just like difficult to date women because like you never want to.
They have expectations. There's very little expectations with men. They want pretty much one thing.
Yeah, but even men have their complications,
Well, sure, of
which we
course.
could get into. But, like, so I was presumed straight because a bisexual woman dating men always presumed straight. That's just the way the world works. So like I had no connection to my queer identity in terms of like the way I was living. That in addition to I had lots of mental health issues that I'm still working on to this day. But all that kind of added up to I wasn't the easiest person. Never have, never will. But like,
Sound easier to get along with now, probably because you've already figured out more. After you did
yes,
that.
yes, I'm much more.
You know more who you are.
I definitely know more of who I am. I don't know. See, it's hard to tell how stable I am right now because the material circumstances of my life right now are so I've spent the past few years constantly on the edge of homelessness. Just and that's it's just not
It's not a place
It's
where
not-
you can
yeah.
build from.
yeah.
You don't
And-
have
and,
a stable foundation.
But I also I have never been more confident of who I am, what I want, and where I'm going. It's just a matter of
You don't know where.
Yeah.
You know who you are. You don't know how you are yet.
Yes, exactly. How am I? But at the time, like I was materially in a much more stable place, but mentally I was just completely lost. And one of the ideas that I kind of latched onto at a very early age was the idea that I wanted to be married. I
You
thought,
grew up with kind of an unstable family too.
no, actually, my parents are still happily married.
I found that a lot of people
over
that
30
have
years now.
really latch on to doing it right,
Right.
which is definitely gonna happen.
But I felt like I just felt like I didn't want to be alone. I felt like I read a lot about about biology and anthropology and knowing that humans are social creatures and that like no, we're not supposed to live alone. That's not the way that our brains are wired. And I just knew that like the best way to ensure that I will not be alone for the rest of my life is to get married. And so I kind of made that into like more than any of the careers I've pursued, I felt like this was a goal.
Did a lot
And
of romanticizing.
yeah, I was extremely romantic. Crippling romantic. It was, I was.
The fantasies clouding the reality.
Exactly. But it did mean that like, when I, was my second ever relationship is with a much older man who already owned a home in Parma. And did not really have any interest in marriage, family, was just content living alone in his honestly too big for one person house.
I lived in too big for one person house for many years.
And like
13.
and here I came in my early 20s and he's in his mid 30s, just like and like we got on really well. The commitment was there, but I had this idea of where a relationship was going. I mean, and he kind of just went along with it because he didn't want to break up. Well, he ended up breaking up with me a month before the wedding.
Sounds, see, like, yeah, my son's mother and her guy, I think that was a lot of it. They had this idea of what it was supposed to be, and the guy kept having that same problem, is that he's like, hey, especially with the Christian religion aspect, run in there, this is what we're supposed to do, this is where we're supposed to go. And he's like, I want this just because they say that's what I'm supposed to do. And also, I think they were both virgins. And I think the sex the only way it's right is it's right.
And that man was the man I lost my virginity to. But like, so anyway, after that, like I had a few short relationships. One of them was one that lasted like a month and a half. I mean, much closer to my age, who was also a virgin. Here's the thing: he had never kissed. He did not know how to kiss. I taught him how to kiss. He did not know that you have to fucking kiss.
So, having lost my virginity with one woman, I did not have much experience. And I learned the hard way, but I did most of it on myself. In my case, I honestly think what made us good together sexually was because she's exceptionally sensitive, possibly because of a lack of experience. But I think there's a biological aspect to her. She is way too open with her mother. I don't even know that. I mean, not a picture of insights. Whoops. Uh-oh. Avalanche. So yeah, as we're talking about sex. So I learned it the hard way, but then a while ago I figured out I'm an artist, so treated myself. I have relatively well-developed hands. I have other limitations because I'm a white male, and I'm gonna deal with what I got there. But I am an artist. I know how to do things.
Or they isolate them in the lunchroom and
This guy, who I taught to kiss, is George. I feel comfortable saying that because again, it's a common name.
There's quite a few Georges out there.
I mean, you could track him down
well.
based on the details, but I
don't think
I
anyone's
don't
worried
feel
about it.
like, I don't think I'm gonna say like horribly inflammatory. This is a matter of public record. But anyway, he, after a couple of months during which I tried not to kiss, like he literally just like, without puckering his lips at all, just,
Smack his face into yours.
yes. I was like, I'd be like, okay,
Look, I knew that.
look, you know, in cartoons, people stick their lips out really far. There's a reason they do that, because the soft part of your lip is the part that you almost contact. Or teeth.
And then I got it at home.
But
My dad knew about.
when I taught him how to do it, and it was hard to, because like you have to sit down and think, okay, so how do I describe with words emotion that I'm envisioning in my head? So you have to think back, okay, what was kissing like back when it was good? Now, how do I describe that to this person who has never done that before?
Well, yeah. Lovely. I still got that here.
So anyway, after a couple months during which I taught him how to kiss, he done it. Exciting, just a vague sense of dissatisfaction and not feeling like this relationship was what we wanted.
It sounds like, well, one, that sounds like it could be an excuse for there's someone else.
Could be.
Or it could be the video gamer kind of syndrome. People are like, hey, that's too much.
Well, and like
I'll take it.
what he told me later was that it was grad school at the time. He was feeling ambivalent about completing grad school because he was starting to feel bored with it as he did. I mean, I know it takes a lot to get through grad school, and he did eventually finish it. So kudos on him. At the time he was going through a rough patch, he just felt like he needed some change in his life, and ending this relationship seemed like a more reasonable change to make than quitting grad school. I was like, okay, sure, why not? Anyway, the next year he contacted me and said, and like was interested in hanging out sometime. And I was like, and the thing is, I never stopped being in love with him. So I was like, I thought about it long time, and I said, I know.
That's the main reason. I'm still in love.
Yeah, well, here's the thing. We got back together.
Sounds awesome.
And he had told me that breaking up with me was the worst mistake he ever
You
made.
got perfect grades.
And that he was committed this time. And I still had that idea in my head of marriage, what I want most. Like, this is a man who has said that he's now committed to making sure that we stay together. And I was like, okay, let's get engaged. Like, because I felt like if we can get engaged, I would never be able to quiet the anxiety. And as it turns out, it takes a little bit more than that to quiet the anxiety. And like, very good. And like,
They're always playing that
we
song.
set a date to get married somewhere like a year and a half after getting back together. And like during that engagement period, we moved in together. We went through relationship counseling and to like make sure that we were prepared mentally and emotionally to make this commitment. And while going through this counseling, like it seemed like what issues we had, we were fully prepared to deal with. And like whenever I had like the anxiety attacks, like he would always be right there, like reassuring me that he wasn't going to leave me this time. I bet you can see where this is going. Well, anyway, we got married. And like I had been getting more and more neurotic as the wedding went. I was having incredible dysphoria.
1 second.
I was having incredible dysphoria. Because like as I was saying, like I was still living as a woman, I was gradually coming to terms with the fact that I might be trans. But like, I felt like preparing for a wedding, and especially the thought of wearing a dress at that wedding was just so like horrifying to me that I could not yet articulate why. So that added to the whole anxiety of the situation. And like when he described later his motives, he did cite my mental health problem as part of it. But like time, it's like it wasn't like they were coming out of nowhere. They were present before. They were present for months, years.
Well, I could have just.
It was just like they were getting amplified as the wedding approached.
But I could have.
And needless to say, before the wedding would have been a great time for him to back out.
Yeah, about that.
You have to pay for all sorts of things. Yeah, I mean, it wasn't an expensive one. I was actually thrilled with the idea of just going to a courthouse and getting it done with. But he was set on having his mother there and having a photographer and like so he said, okay, so what's the minimum that you need to be satisfied that this is a proper wedding? And we focused on those things. His mother was there. My mother was not. We visited my parents' house. But like, and I had a dress. It wasn't a wedding dress, but it was a dress. I felt like I was fulfilling my duty, but I also felt horrible about it. But that's fine. You know, I figured there's like there's gonna be like the rest of my life to as opportunities to explore my career. But like, we got married in the fall. We had a really horrible holiday season in which I had severe panic attacks every holiday because I was like, we were like reinventing every holiday as an area. And like I felt there was a lot of pressure on it. And then like after we we drove down to Georgia to visit his father and his wife, which was pretty atrocious because they are extremely conservative.
I got one with a pro.
and he, my then father-in-law made a point of explaining to us how he did not believe that the genders should be equal, and like just all kinds of like terrible things.
This is what you're supposed to do. Isn't
I'm like, we drove home from that.
Yeah, I had a trap.
Arrived home late in early January. He said, I'm gonna go out and hang out with my.
I thought I had it in the net while
And I was like, okay.
I pulled it down from the ceiling.
Just touching in each other's presence, so fine. And I like texted with one of my friends, and I was like, everything was fine. And the next day, he came home from work, and just went told me that he was leaving.
Who was the friend, a female? No. Okay.
No, it was his guy friend who he had been roommates with up until moving in with me.
So the friend's like, this was a terrible mistake. What did you do?
Well,
Or did he already have those thoughts?
I don't know. He had those thoughts.
Well, when we were seeing.
He told me that he had those thoughts at least for a month.
I really wish I had gotten that from my ex-wife. Like some kind of like talk or explanation would have certainly helped the many years.
I didn't get it until later, but like that night it was just, I'm leaving, you can't change my mind. And me following him out into the street and like walking down the street watching his car drive away.
Yeah, I've been divorced for 11 years, so I will never get that. It's
But also like it's kind of, but having an explanation is really a double-edged sword. It's like, if you have an explanation, that's just one more thing to fix it.
sorry, this kid is
Adorably.
yeah. Also, I like that how he's telling her to be better.
So the day he left was the day before our 3-month anniversary. Also, here's another element. The financial element.
Oh, boy.
So a couple months before we got married, he finished his master's degree and received his dream job as an engineer for NASA, making more than twice what we had been making combined before that. I was working at a gas station.
So the second grade, the sixth grade.
The day that he got that job offer, we went out to eat, celebrate, and like, and I was talking, and we were talking about, well, what are we going to change because of this?
We're gonna buy a house, we're gonna get a car.
Exactly.
all
What
that fun.
like, and like, the biggest thing was I really wanted to go back to school. I had dropped out of school, and I finally felt like I wanted to go back, try it again.
What was it you were doing? Or trying to do?
Here's the thing, I've never been able to limit myself to just one major, but like, the thing is, like, I'm not really picky about majors or career fields, but I wanted to be doing something more than just a cashier at a gas station.
Okay.
I have at various points been an English major, an accounting major, a psychology major, and an urban affairs major.
Accounting sounds awful.
I enjoy accounting. The thing is, though, there was a bottleneck, and it was called intermediate accounting, and only one professor in all of Cleveland State University teaches it. And he did not teach in a way that was able to reach me.
I had a real big problem with a technical writing teacher who treated the course like you're an EP, like third level English major. I'm not an English major. I've taken technical writing. She would treat me more right. Okay, fair enough. But the psychology one, I have often heard that most people who enter that field do it because they're trying to figure out their own problems.
I mean, don't get me wrong,
I
that
wouldn't
is
say
part of
most,
it.
how about many?
But also, like, I'm fascinated by the human mind. I'm fascinated by human behavior.
Okay.
And like, and I think the last major that I switched to was economic development within the urban affairs college in the state.
Oh,
Which,
you know what you might find? Probably don't even need a degree for it. IOB is hiring. A lot of those various degrees you have sound like things they would find useful. Various courses you took, not degrees. I don't think you need a degree. Do you know what that is?
no, I don't.
In our backyard, IOBY. It is a charity, and they're looking for people
Okay, I
because they have recently moved a lot of people up during COVID times. So now they have vacancies in the lower levels. And
Okay, that is not the first thing that comes up for IOB.
IOBY.
In our,
Backyard. It's a local, like, crowdfunding charity kind of thing. We're doing like local small projects.
okay, I will,
And then look on their job board or whatever they got. They were hiring, but a lot of what you're saying, economic affairs, psychology, it sounds like you probably have some coursework they might not use. And I don't think they're going to require a degree.
well, I really got,
Or they might help you finish the degree to get the job.
but like urban affairs and economic development, they're really stimulated my brain. Does
I
to
mean,
this day.
they were a minority, and I think having been somebody who has suffered from poverty so much, you're going to understand the situation of Cleveland locals
Right,
who are trying to do good things in impoverished
I will
areas.
definitely look into it.
So it sounds like it's up your alley. Whether or not you get a degree or not, you might be able to talk with them and kind of work it together.
Well, anyway, so back to my story.
Yes, yes.
So like
I
we had
interrupted.
decided together before we even, got pitched that I was going to quit my job to go back to school using the money that he was going to make with his dream job. So that maybe someday I would also have a dream job.
Okay.
He left me a week after, like I had quit my job right before we went on that trip. And it was right after we got back from that trip. And I had already signed up for classes, I had already paid for them. And like, there was a time like in those first few days where I was like, I need to withdraw from my classes and go back to work It's like, because they can't afford this. Like, we ended up working out, like, we ended up negotiating a deal where I would receive enough of our shared savings at that point to finish out my degree, and then backed out of it at the last minute and ended up getting a compliment.
Thank you. Can I still get a water when you get a chance? And me, I go till I'm like rocketing off. It really helps my mania, I promise.
I believe you. I trust most people when they just sit on that.
You would be wrong, but I like your faith in me. And I've lived alone for 11 years.
That helps sometimes.
Yeah, no one can see the things I'm doing to myself, eating my feelings.
And like at this point, like I mentioned like earlier, like early in life, I was afraid of living alone. And now it's like I'm afraid of not living alone now. It's like
I
at this
feel you
point,
there.
I've been hurt too much.
I feel you there.
It's not even getting into like the relationships I've had since my divorce. Like,
I wonder if she realizes that that camera is accidental. Not on purpose. That's all right. The video is probably not going up since it's only going to see the audio. I don't think the video is really showing much. The computer will probably die before I can record it. So I think this is gonna be an audio only.
possibly.
I think the audio is probably gonna be clearer anyways.
Do I regret having both the meat heavy meal and the milkshake? Not yet.
Not
I
yet.
might regret it by the time we get.
All the protein's in there.
I might need to go to the bathroom.
All right.
So, talking to the camera.
Yeah, really.
And it was, I mean, it was on the freeway off the side.